Welcome, everyone, to a very special live, for those of you tuning in live, edition of the Marc Claire Show. It's special for many reasons. One of them, of course, is my guest, the very special man himself, Pete Quinones of the Pete Quinones Show. Pete, what's happening?
Doing well, Mark. That was so John Page did that music?
Yes, he did. Absolutely.
Yeah. Who did the graphics?
The graphics was done by, you know who who created my cover, right? Bert did the actual cover, and then one of Diane's friends' cousins in Mexico put it all together into the animation.
Very cool. Very cool.
It all kind of happened. It just kind of happened, like I was just kind of talking about a new show. Then John's like, "Hey, I'll write your intro," and I told him what I wanted. Then it just happened, and I ran into Bert somewhere and was like, "Hey, you do great." And then suddenly, like before I knew it, everything just came together. I had to send nothing back for edits. Everything came perfect. It was providence.
Freaking awesome, man.
Yeah. So for those of you, for those not familiar, maybe the two people not familiar with you that might be tuning in, why don't you just do like the 30-second abridged version of who exactly is Pete Quinones and what does he do?
I used to host a podcast called The Free Man Beyond the Wall. It became the Pete Quinones Show on January 1st, 2022. I used to be a ANCAP libertarian /ish thing, and I pretty much don't know what I am now. It's I'm one of those people who gets probably catches flack from my former colleagues that I'm just reacting to everything that's going on. So I'm a reactionary or a neo-reactionary or something like that. I'll take it. I'm good. I don't care. I don't care what anybody says.
We are both survivors of the great post-libertarian Twitter wars of 2020 to 2022. So we have some battle scars for sure. But let's see what kind of names people are calling us after this show, because we're gonna get weird today. And part of the fun of this show, Pete, is that you and I kind of toss this premise to you. The premise being top 5 lies nearly everyone believes. And that's it. That's all we discussed. We've individually created our own little lists, and we're going to reveal them live to each other. So we might have 10 totally different items here. We might have the same 5. Who knows? It's going to be fun to find out. Before we dive into this, maybe do you want to talk about just like kind of, because we didn't really discuss what this even means. So I'm kind of like looking at it as I'll go through my criteria and you can kind of go through yours. I try to find the right balance, because this isn't necessarily, I'm calling it a top 5. I don't have metrics. I don't know if it's in the right order. I'm not really too obsessed with that. I just tried to pick 5 things that met a good mix of very obvious to me, but some things that most people you run into in real life would still believe to be true. And that we're in a weird era now where with all the podcasts and alternative media, some of this stuff, there might actually be a pretty large number of people who might agree with me that it's a lie. So there's a balance there, but I tried to find a sort of middle ground with all this stuff.
Yeah, there was a couple things that immediately came to mind. Yesterday I was meditating on it, and a couple more things came to mind. I have like 4, solid ones that I came up with, and then there's a couple extra that we just talk about for a couple minutes, because it's really not that big a deal. It's just interesting. Oh, so that's not true, kind of thing. But there's a couple big ones. And like I said, we haven't discussed. We could be repeating. We could have the same 5 things, but we'll see.
Did you say you have some runners up then? Are there a couple you just want to mention before we get into like the real top 5, or do you want to save those for an after?
Sure. Well, the Coriolis effect causes toilets to flush in the southern hemisphere in the opposite direction of the one here. It's total bullshit. It's completely fake. And that wouldn't work on a flat Earth anyway. So what are we talking about here?
That is one of those ones that I do remember always hearing when you grow up, like, oh, you go to Australia and your water goes down like the opposite way. That's not true, Pete?
No, it's not.
You can't. It doesn't.
It's completely bogus.
And then that's why we live on a spinning ball, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, if you're gonna give us proofs, like, come on.
Well, okay. Well, it's just people down there will tell you that. People who live in Australia will tell you. It just and have been here. It's just the same. It's the same exact thing. It's just There's no. It's like if you ever saw the movie Sniper, Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
Shooter. Mark,
Shooter. That's what. Right.
and he talks about and snipers, for long distances we have to take into account the spin of the earth, the Coriolis effect.
Mhm.
Ask a long distance sniper if that's true or not. It's total bullshit.
This episode, I didn't tell you guys this. This is actually top 5 flat Earth proofs. Which is what we're doing. This will be fun. Someone did mention Henry here. This should be interesting while trying to stay within the wafer thin passage between YouTube's guardrails, which it should be actually. I don't think none of mine are V related, so I should be safe there. But yeah, we're gonna get into some interesting areas. So, all right, who should we start first? Do you want to start first? Do you want to be the one to give me your real number 5?
Yeah, you want me to go with it? Okay,
let's do it, Pete.
All right, so I thought it would be way too easy to do like debunk the Spanish Inquisition, that there were like these priests because I'm doing that on my show with Aaron. So there's something in there that I'm sure a lot of people related to that I'm sure a lot of people believe. Things like Iron Maidens, the rack, all these torture devices. Yeah, these didn't exist before the 19th century. It's total bullshit. They were invented for circuses, freak shows, museums, things like that. I mean, there's like, when you look at some of the things, like the earliest known record of a supposed Iron Maiden comes from a guidebook of Nuremberg written by a German, of course, is German, who claimed that the Iron Maiden had first been used.
Why does that always keep coming up?
Yes, yeah, but it turns out that so he had this one. It turns out to be fraudulent. It basically, as early as 1802, a hoax Iron Maiden was displayed in the city of Nuremberg. The Nuremberg Iron Maiden was destroyed before World War II. But
is the Iron Maiden the one where they put you inside this thing and they close with spikes and they like close it and your blood slowly drains out?
Yeah,
in theory.
So, like, there were all these phony Iron Maidens ones, and alleged Iron Maiden was even displayed at the World's Fair in Chicago in 1893. Not a single surviving Iron Maiden can be dated any earlier than like the 1800s. So, you have all these stories about how, the priests were using this on people who, wouldn't convert to Christianity, which is not what the the Spanish Inquisition was about anyway. And I mean, it's just all these torture devices, the rack. There is some there's, put it this way, the evidence is like it's like, okay, no, I have this one piece of evidence here. Well, if they really existed, there'd be so much evidence there that one person coming in and saying, oh, here's this one piece of evidence that it existed, and it always falls apart. It's like the pair of anguish is another things where metal leaves can be expanded by turning a screw, and they would shove it down a victim's throat.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one.
Their vagina or their anus, and slowly screw it. I mean, they're totally made up. It didn't exist. These things were all created for like sideshows in the 19th century. And the Scold's Bride is another one. I mean, the Spanish Tickler. It's just, this is.
I think I've tried that one before.
Yeah.
So what do you think was the impetus for? Do you think it just started off, like you said, as just something for freak shows? So how did it get retroactively inserted into history? What do you think was do you think that was just something that sort of happened, or do you think there's a more nefarious reason for it?
Well, hey, Bert Grimm's there.
Bert Grimm. All right. We were just talking about you.
What's up, Bert? Protestant lies. It's basically Protestant lies. I mean, it came out of the Inquisition. When you look at the Inquisition and you read the Maestra on the Inquisition, basically Protestants were just all right, let's steel man this a little bit. Maybe because they didn't have the internet, there were people who made up stories, like the humanists and atheists and anti-church people who made up stories in Spain and then traveled and brought them to other places, and it just spread, and Protestants heard them who were completely against the Catholic Church. I mean, protest, revolution, and they just they heard, once these things started making the rounds in like circuses and freak shows and stuff like that, people, the story just come out. Oh, this is what was used in the Spanish Inquisition too, and people just glommed onto it. just grabbed onto it. I mean, I have one that's will make some people crazy, like 2 or 3 away from here. But this one really shouldn't. It's just, you should realize that history isn't what we think it is. And when they say there's evidence of something, the evidence should, if you're saying something's happening in the 15th and 16th century, you should have evidence of it that predates the 19th century and, the era of entertainment.
I gotta say, Pete, I'm pretty disappointed because the torture devices were one of my favorite parts of history. So I don't know what to think anymore. I'm not sure what that says about me. All right, well, I will move into my number 5, and I think it's safe to say this is a very different direction than you went. So my number 5 lie that most people believe. Jerry Sandusky is a pedophile who molested dozens of young boys over several decades of coaching football at Penn State University, a fact which was later covered up by Joe Paterno and Penn State University. That was kind of a long one. I probably could have put that more succinctly. Nonetheless, my number 5 lie is the Sandusky scandal. Now, this is sort of an individualized event. It's not really I guess it's not grandiose, but I think the way that it happened is sort of grandiose because it says a lot about media, how information moves. It's essentially what could be equated to a modern day witch hunt. I think the best source on this stuff is clearly John Ziegler. His work on this case is just bar none. He pretty much destroyed his own career by going deep on this stuff. He's someone who doesn't even like Jerry Sandusky. He often mentions how much he dislikes Jerry Sandusky, but he's interested in the truth of this case. And this is one I didn't bring any sort of visuals for, as I do for some of my later ones, because I just want to send people over my former colleague, current friend, John Odermatt, whose show I was just on the other day. He has done incredible interviews with John Ziegler. I got to say, probably at least 4 or 5 interviews he's done with John Ziegler over the course of a few years. And if you can deep dive on this stuff and look into Ziegler's work and say with a straight face that you believe that this is what happened, then you get a special year-long membership to the Marc Clair Show Premium, I guess. We'll see if I back that up. I'm not sure. Point being, it is not a conspiracy is the thing too. Like everything we talk about is going to feel like a conspiracy of some kind, but sometimes lies just exist and permeate because of the way humans are and the way our media is and the way our communication is. This all just started from a non-incident that wasn't anything involving molestation that somehow leaked into a court document that was leaked to the public that then turned into a combination of a bad movement of misinformation combined with an institution scrambling to cover itself up for something that didn't really happen, but wanting to sort of put out the veneer of we are taking care of this. And if you really need any more evidence that this is that there's something behind this, something shady behind this, just look at who was brought in to run the investigation. You know who was brought in, Pete, to run that?
I can't remember. I did an episode 229 of the Free Man Beyond the Wall podcast is John Odermatt talking about Sandusky.
Yes. So it was Louis Freeh. Familiar with him?
That's right.
So it's an interesting one because, I mean, Louis Freeh pops up everywhere. He might even pop up later on in this conversation, in this episode. But there are just so many layers to this one. But I don't know. There's no way I can possibly break down the summary of this. But let's just say it would, for someone to molest boys for 30 years, there are at least like a few requirements that you would pretty much assume would be true. One of them being has functional genitals. Jerry Sandusky does not. That's a medical fact that's come out. Probably wouldn't have been invited to the graduation of and written a very passionate defense of by someone who later said they were one of his victims. Essentially, once the money came in, once the massive amounts of essentially guaranteed money came in, because they didn't want to traumatize victims, if people met a certain criteria, meaning were at Penn State, involved in the football program during X number of years, and were a boy and could have been around Jerry Sandusky alone, they just got millions of dollars straight up. And that's what it became. And unfortunately, because no one really looks into these things. They just see image on TV. They see a lot of people think Joe Paterno is a child molester. You know, that's how bad information travels. The fact is Joe Paterno was essentially killed as far as I'm concerned for this. He was going to retire anyway, not in disgrace, as one of the most well-remembered football coaches of all time.
Mhm.
And instead, he was forced out because of a dumb thing that he said, that he was probably advised to say, that he wished he could have done more. But that is not a line based on anything he actually saw or ever. That was, he never saw anything bad and never even suspected anything bad, which is why he never said anything, because there was nothing to say, because nothing ever fucking happened. That might sound like a crazy thing to say for anybody that hasn't followed this closely, but as someone who's followed this very, very deeply for 5 or 6 years now, I don't even hesitate to say that I believe he's completely innocent and that this is a total lie. Pete, thoughts?
Yeah. Well, we live in a time where pedophilia is worse than murder. I mean, it just is, especially for people on the right. Pedophilia, with the Q situation, with, I mean, let's face it, thousands of kids going missing every year, and Pizzagate, which, well, I mean, I covered Pizzagate with Daryl Cooper on my show, and it's a ridiculous theory. Um, defending somebody who was convicted of pedophilia is, is really brave, and I know Ziegler really took a lot of shit, and but after looking at, I mean, I think that once you realize that Jerry Sandusky has never had functioning genitalia, you have to realize, okay, what somebody described that they heard and kind of saw couldn't have happened. There's no way it could have happened at all. So,
nevertheless, the fact that, unlike with literally every pedophile ever in history, not only was there no child porn found anywhere, and obviously they searched his house, everything, every property he's ever had, no porn. Like, this is a non-sexual person. Jerry Sandusky doesn't even think about sex. I mean, his wife has said as much. It's so separated from him that the idea of this is just beyond absurd. And then you compare that to the lack of evidence, the zero evidence that exists, and the completely contradictory stories of all the supposed victims. Again, I'm not afraid to say supposed victims at this point. To me, it's obvious. I think one of my original iterations of this was type 5 obvious lies. I guess if they're obvious, that nobody would believe it. So, I guess that's a sort of relative term. But to me, when you really look at this, it's just incredibly obvious. And the only reason to think it's true is because you're just not thinking about it, is because you've seen the headlines over and over, and you can't imagine someone defending a child molester, nor can I imagine someone defending a child molester. But I will defend someone who I think has completely been railroaded and is in jail for no reason. So there we go.
And I think that it's easy to do that to people now that you don't like, and especially powerful people. Monica Perez does not believe that Michael Jackson ever touched a kid.
I considered putting that in one of my spots too.
Yeah, I mean,
I went Sandusky.
When you start looking at the evidence, there's no evidence.
Because I'm less sure of Michael Jackson, but it's like you said, it's right in line. No porn with Michael Jackson either.
Yeah, and considering that he's called out a certain tribe of people, not only in songs, but there's audio out there of him speaking about a certain tribe that is very
talking about the Iroquois, right?
Yeah, the Amish, definitely the Amish. That I don't know. I think that I've said that if it ever got to it where I got a little too close, they're not going to put a bullet in my head. They'll just hide something on my hard drive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they do now. Instead of putting a bullet in your head, they just turn you into a pedophile, and then everyone turns on you. Left,
Makes
right.
me wonder why they didn't think of that with MJ. Why they didn't, plant some porn.
Well, maybe it wasn't as easy to do back then. Now, I mean,
now just shoot a file over or something,
Yeah,
or just hack in.
So,
all right, Pete, that was
our
number 5. Interesting way to kick things off. Let's hear your number 4. Top 5. Your number 4 lie. Nearly everyone believes.
All right. Vietnam veterans came home and they got spit on at airports.
Ooh, all right. I like this one.
Total bullshit. So Vietnam ended. Troops were mostly pulled out in 1973. The escape from Saigon was in 1975. 7 years later, a movie is made that a lot of people see and a lot of people still like, especially dudes. Dudes love a good Sylvester Stallone movie, especially a movie called First Blood. And in First Blood, he plays
Guilty.
Vietnam veteran who, is getting abused as he goes into the town. He gets the sheriff messes with him. He ends up, yada, yada, all this stuff. At the end, he gives his speech where he's talking to Colonel Troutman, and he's saying, and then we came home. We were, the way we were treated, getting spit on at the airport and everything like that. That's almost like literally where this came from. It came from a movie 7 years after the war.
Is it that recent of a thing? Okay, I thought it was propaganda of the time.
No, it wasn't propaganda at the time. A book was written by a Vietnam veteran who was there, Jerry Lembeck, and it's called The Spitting Image: Myth, Memory, and Legacy in Vietnam. And he says a persistent but unfounded criticism leveled against those who protested in opposition to the Vietnam War is that they spat upon and otherwise derided returning soldiers, calling them baby killers. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, years after the Vietnam War ended, the proliferation of these stories increased. They just multiplied. They multiplied. It's like another event in history where once people started talking about, oh, this happened to me, everybody had a horrible story that happened to them. But I mean, it got to the point where in 1987, columnist Bob Greene had picked up that this story was going around. And he's like, even during the most fervent days of the anti-war protests, it seemed it was not the soldiers who protesters were maligning. It was the leaders of the government and the top generals. At least that's how it seemed in memory. One of the most popular chants during the anti-war marches was "Stop the war in Vietnam, bring the boys home." You heard that at every peace rally, "Bring the boys home." That was the message. Also, when one thought realistically about the image of what was supposedly to have happened, it seemed questionable. So-called hippies, no matter what else one may have felt about them, were not the most macho people in the world. Picture a burly member of the Green Berets in full uniform walking through an airport. Now think a hippie crossing his path. Would the hippie have the nerve to spit on the soldier? And if the hippie did, would the soldier, fresh from facing enemy troops? Some of these guys were walking through the airports after being out of combat for 5 days. They're just going to stand there and take it. I mean, so people just started writing, people started looking into this, and 1992, more research is done into it. 1994, more research is done, put into it. And in 1994, a scholar, Paul Rogat-Loeb, wrote, "To consider spitting on soldiers as even remotely representative of the activist responses to validate a lie," and noted that myths like that of the anti-war activists spitting on soldiers have rewritten or erased history. Basically, what people who looked at this, what they figure is that this was just propaganda that was pushed by people who were sick of having the war be maligned. And it was like, oh, well, these.
So it was meant to denigrate what would be maybe some genuine anti-war activism, I guess.
Absolutely. And we know that in the 60s, I've read a couple long articles on the anti-war movement. Like 70% of the people were feds, and they were saying that like you would never have a rally on a Friday because everybody was picking up their check. So it was, so you basically, this whole thing about spitting on people is just made up, is absolutely to denigrate the anti-war movement and to make the people who were protesting it look insane. If it happened once, but nobody, let's hear from somebody who it happened to. No, it came from a friggin' movie.
Like, do you know if literally that was the first mention of this thing in First Blood, or was it maybe some small story somewhere? And then
that's what researchers believe, that it was really propagated by First Blood. Well, here, let me see what I said here. What is it? A myth? Like they had said that there's no evidence at all of like them screaming at like baby killer or murderer at anyone. As a matter of fact, if you listen, it's like the chants were more like, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today? They weren't putting it on. So he said, Lembeck said, the spitting on soldiers scenario was a mythical projection by those who felt spat upon by an American society tired of the war, an image which was then used to discredit future anti-war activism and serve political interests. He suggested manufactured images of pro-war antipathy against anti-war protesters also helped contribute to the myth. So, yeah, and then he mentions here, he says, Lembeck attributes part of the legend's growth to films relating to Vietnam, specifically the first one being First Blood. That was the first movie that really showed it, and then you saw it in subsequent movies after that. But Bob Greene, in his 1989 book Homecoming, reprinted letters asking to hear from veterans if they felt like they had been spat upon, and 63 alleged. Green's book includes 63 alleged accounts involving spitting and 69 accounts from veterans who do not feel anyone who spat upon him after Green admits he could validate the authenticity of the accounts of letters he received, but he did believe spitting must have occurred, stating there were simply too many letters, but it was outside of the, it wasn't something that was, happening every single day. It happened once or twice, and I hope that person got their ass kicked. And
much like with your number 5 pick, it's like there's a thing that is either, in this case, something said, or in that case, it was a physical object, and then it just gets somehow reinserted in backwards in time into our history, and then is believed the whole time, which I think is in many ways may be a running thread through all this in one way or another. So
yeah, so I mean, people were spit upon, but this wasn't something that it wasn't a
national movement of
it wasn't mimetic. It wasn't like people were like, oh, we're just going to go spit on soldiers and everything like that. And when it comes down to it, like I said, he talks about 63 people saying that it happened to them, or it could have happened. What he says is it could have happened to them. People have a tendency, if they feel really, to make themselves victims. There's another that event that I keep thinking about has a lot of that going on with it.
Right. So you could actually say perhaps that is the most influential thing that Sylvester Stallone's ever said. Would that be accurate? Yo, Adrian, sick of getting spit on.
What do you got?
All right, number 4. Struggled with this one. Struggled where to put it. Struggled if to put it. I think, and this is one I can't say I have. Some of these things I can actually point to real evidence, or point you to at least podcasts or other work that's been done. Others are just pure gut, and this one is pure gut for me, Pete. My number 4 is 2 words: Helen Keller.
I was going to do Helen Keller, but
you still can. Okay, but not. I didn't ruin one of your future picks.
No.
Okay, good. No. I wanted to put this on there just because it's one that's it's a recent one for me. I think most of the stuff that's on here is some of it goes back a long time. My skepticism of, but this is one that I only got onto very, very recently. I don't remember where I first heard someone bring it up. It might have been like an episode of Tinfoil Hat. Might have been Owen Benjamin, because I did see him do a stream where he was talking about it. And it's one of those things that I just never thought, like, so much propaganda, so much that we're
Didn't I talk about it on the last stream we did?
You might have. That's possible. Yeah. It might. Yeah. I mean, it's come up randomly enough times that I like. When it just comes up, I think about it. And I'm like, oh, that seems obviously stupid. But that's one step of it, is when you just spend the minute to think about someone being born deaf, dumb, and blind, and then not only going on to communicate in any way at all, but to have very strong political opinions to the point that they become a socialist and a strong advocate for women's rights. And like, how could you even conceptualize any of that as someone who can't even communicate can't even wrap their head around what reality is? Now that people will just say like, well, that's what's so incredible about the story, and that's remarkable. And and that's definitely what I thought as a kid. Like, yeah, that's incredible. But I think one thing over the last couple of years, and that's really come clear is how easily people can just believe whatever is thrown out at them, especially back in the day when it was just like, oh, well, they put it on TV. They wouldn't do that. Obviously, if they got on TV, they went through the right channels of whatever. So I'm sure it's just something everyone believed, because why wouldn't they? I mean, why would someone make that up? And when I think of why someone would make that up, you look throughout, I could have chosen many different people for this one. I just kind of chose one of this type. But there are so many just created people all throughout history. And there is always some sort, when if you just look into it a little bit. Now, I haven't looked deep on Helen Keller, but I've looked deep enough to know that she had very strong political opinions. Weird. Always tending to go in the same direction, always going towards socialism and women's rights and things of this nature. And maybe I could buy that someone born this way could somehow manage to navigate society and somehow with a lot of help from other people and could manage to continue living in some way. But for that same person to develop very strong political opinions. Oh, and a British accent. Did I mention the British accent? Sometimes. So for this one, Pete, I did actually, sometimes StreamYard is a little funky with me. I did actually bring a little bit of, I don't know if we want to call it evidence, but let's just call it a visual aid here. So give me a second here, and I'm going to try to locate my little evidence file and bring up a little video. This one's called Helen Keller Speaks Out.
In this room sits a remarkable woman.
Here, I'll lower the volume. We don't need to hear it all. All
You
right,
don't
there she is. I want to
see
get to the real good
the
stuff later on.
business.
First of all, the fact that they're doing, even back then, they were creating propaganda pieces about her, kind of tells you something. Anyway, here she is, knitting or whatever the fuck she's doing. Oh yeah, this is the first thing I wanted to point out, because she, couldn't talk, even though she sort of could, as you'll see soon, and couldn't see, couldn't do anything. She had, I guess, she somehow developed a very, very special tickle language, where if you come up and tickle her hand, she knows what you're saying, as you'll see by her
Who you are.
interpreter lady here. Oh, there you go. We're talking to Helen. Hey, Helen, how are you? How's it going? What's going on? These are words. I'm supposed to believe these are words and that she's understanding them.
Helen's eyes, ears upon the world.
Look how happy she is. Now, this is the close-up. This is where I guess we see what the actual signs that she's making.
How would she know what these are?
That's the close-up, and not as when you actually look at it. Oh, I'm just gonna go back just a little bit. When you actually look at her doing it, she's not doing that. Just look, she's tickling her fucking finger. Okay. Maybe we can buy. I like the music too. It's like they put in the silly music for me. Maybe we can believe all that. Maybe. Let's just fast forward a little. What is she doing? She's sniffing. Oh, we got to remember, she's fucking Daredevil, by the way. They make this clear. They're like, they say they heard, she knew this lady was coming in by the softness of her.
But if you enter a room, she will know it.
She'll know it.
Your lightest footfall will tell her.
Lightest footfall. She's Daredevil, as you'll then see by. She sniffs things. She has super smell. She can smell that fucking leaf or whatever. There she is talking. She just
She answers with her voice.
Yeah, she can also just hold your lips and knows what you're saying.
Unnatural voice.
All right, and
She's not
then
heard a word.
let's get to. Okay, are you ready to hear Helen Keller? To hear this woman speak? Now, I should just put out this disclaimer. For any one of these, it is within the realm of possibility that I'm wrong. It is possible that I'm currently making fun of someone who is born with incredible disadvantages in life. It's possible. I just don't think so. So I'm willing to go forward with it.
Not blindness, or deafness, that volumes me.
Notice she stopped moving. Like
Is she speaking in tongues?
Not blindness or deafness.
she got her translator. Don't worry.
Darkest hour.
Neither blindness nor death. Yeah, that's what she said.
Is that Anne Sullivan?
It might be.
It is the attitude.
Do you notice she has a slight British accent here, Pete? How does someone who's never heard a thing and doesn't know what a sound is or has a slight? No, it's a retarded British accent.
It is the acute disappointment in not being able to speak normally.
I love the very accurate immediate translation.
I think she's drunk.
I think that's all of that we need to watch right now. Let's see. Was there any? Yeah, it's mostly just more of this garbage. Now, in fairness, this might be my flimsiest one in a way, because I can't really point to the thread that shows, okay, well, actually she was born this other girl and was raised an actress and taught to be this person. I don't have any of that. This is just purely what I see and feel with my eyes and look at and then spend just 1 second thinking about it. And you realize just how fucking retarded the whole thing is. So
It's so bullshit. It
I'm
really
just,
is.
are you feeling my vibe here, Pete?
So-
Am I crazy? Am I making fun
Someone
of people?
mentioned to me that you know, I don't live far from her home. I'm like, if I go visit that, they're gonna kick me out. There's no way. I mean, they're gonna kick me out because I'm gonna be like, you know, this is all bullshit, right? And I'm not gonna and I'm not gonna use my inside voice. I'm gonna be like, this is total bullshit. None of this is real. And isn't it just absolutely strange that her politics just happen to match Anne Sullivan, her lifelong companion's politics? Really odd, strange. I don't know how that would happen.
Yeah, somehow, even though she couldn't see or hear, she was able to take enough information into her through magic tickle hand language that she was able to fully grasp concepts such as the tax rate and whether that should go up, what a woman even fucking is, let alone that they should vote and have stronger rights and all of this. It's just flat out fucking absurd. And maybe it's not the highest level conspiracy, but I think it's an example of just how easily and how often just myths are created. And this would be one I don't think was stumbled into. Like, this is obviously very intentional. She's someone, whenever you hear about someone since you're a kid, just assume it's a lie. I think just assume that at least the story is a lie, even if the person is real.
Remember George Washington? I cannot tell a lie. He chopped down a cherry tree. Yeah, that happened.
Are you telling me that's not true, Pete?
That happened.
Pete, what are you doing to me here? That was my number one. Spoiler alert. Look, it's all mythology and all of this stuff. And I think most of the figures we learn about, whether they're real or fake, what's told to us about them is almost pure mythology. And the more ridiculous it sounds, the more likely it is ridiculous. Sounds ridiculous for a reason. My dad always told me, and it's always turned out to be true. If something seems too good to be true, it is. And if something seems too ridiculous to be true, it fucking is. And this is ridiculous.
Well, it's also mythology. If you're mythologizing somebody, that's, there's a question there. You're okay. Why are we mythologizing this person? I remember when I really started looking into what a piece of crap Lincoln was. Someone showed me a book from like, I think it's like 18.
Nolan had a great comment. It just shows how stupid the ideas are that someone that can't comprehend reality would come up with it.
but
that's actually the best argument for it being real.
Yeah. But someone showed me like a book that had a question and answer with one of Lincoln's old law partners, and they were already talking about the mythology of Lincoln to him. And the guy's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. That guy was a creep. Yeah, he was like, it's like, okay, so why are we mythologizing someone? What's the point? And I think that's probably going to be my number one, is somebody that we mythologized.
Yeah, and whether or not like the mythology of her, because she was mythologized, I think, kind of live at the time. Like, she was, I think, well known during that time, and then was hoisted up as a figure that you should listen to, because if you're not going to listen to the person that can't see or hear or comprehend anything in reality, who are you going to listen to? So I think they pump her up and send her out there to say, we need more women's rights. We need more socialism. Women got to vote. We probably need abortions too soon, something like that. And then you can't, it sort of disarms people from saying, oh, she's wrong. You're going to disagree with this brilliant, incredible, inspirational woman who battled her deaf, dumb blindness and was able to do mumble British talk. You're going to say bad things. You're not going to disagree with her. No.
Yes, I will.
We need women's rights. I think really more than even that video, I think when I found out she had very strong political opinions, like, that was it for me. Like, I was like, no. It's just not possible. It's just not possible without them being translated for her. She might even be she might even be a real deaf, dumb, blind person, maybe, that was just totally manipulated and that they, changed what she said she was saying. I don't know. Or she's just some fucking old ass British actress. I don't know.
If she was a communist, how did she read Marx? How did she,
tickle language, tickle hands.
Come on.
Time for your Marx reading, Helen. All right. Well, I didn't make it number one, so there's that.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on. Number 3, Pete.
Well, my number 3.
Juicy now.
And this will be a short one. This one is kind of unimportant, but Vincent van Gogh.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I never put any thought into this one, so I'm open ears here.
Oh, funny you should use that. Funny you should say that.
Yeah. I still got Helen Keller on my mind, I think.
Vincent van Gogh, because he was distraught over a woman, cut his ear off and then gave it to a call girl, a prostitute. Yeah, shut up. It's all it's a lie. But now let's put it this way. Okay, so at some point, Vincent and a fellow artist named Paul Gauguin got together, and they partnered together, and they were doing work together, and they had a fight one day, and we don't know what happened, but Vincent pulled out a razor blade, was gonna go at Gauguin, but turned out he didn't. He ends up cutting a little piece of his earlobe off. He just cut. We don't even know if it was like him swinging it or something like that. We don't know if he did it on purpose. I mean, even Wikipedia still has up the official story, which is total bullshit. So he cuts a little piece of his ear off, and allegedly then he picks it up, puts it in. The next day he goes to some call girl he knows, and there's no evidence of this. There's no evidence whatsoever.
Why would that be what you would think to do, even if you really dig into it? Dropped off? Like,
there's no evidence that this happened. So it's like just a little piece of his earlobe got cut off. And, and I know people who had lost pieces of their earlobe because they had earrings ripped out, and then, we don't know what happened after that. We know that he and Gauguin didn't have any, I think they may have later on, gotten together on something, but, I mean, it's just this simple thing. He didn't cut his ear off. All the jokes about, hey, Vincent, do you think you should cut your ear off just for that girl? What? Yeah, it's all bullshit.
So do you think there's any nefarious purpose behind that one? Or is that just one of these weird things that based on a tiniest sliver of truth, like something happened to his ear? Where does the idea that he gave it to a prostitute even come from? That's the one that's like, how does that even come up? Like,
well, and considering I think he had a girlfriend at the time. It just doesn't make any sense. The whole story is just weird. So maybe Gauguin pulled a Tyson. That could be it.
Oh yeah.
But it's just this weird made up thing that it makes it kind of romantic when maybe someone just turned, made a fake. It's like the whole I don't know, you might have. Do you have anything about the Revolutionary War?
No.
Okay.
From here on out, we're all in Wild Town. So,
okay.
You can go with any history stuff all you want.
Like the British are coming, Paul Revere, the ride, all that. I mean, so much of that stuff, so much of the legend around the Revolutionary War was stuff that was fiction that was written in the 1800s. And I think it's just somebody was like, oh, let's romanticize this. And, somebody wrote an article. I mean, like I was literally researching this and the people who were like, that isn't what happened. They're like, we have no idea how this came into being.
I mean, look at what modern history even says about like 1/6, for example, or about, the entire Trump regime and what happened with all that, or the sniffles thing that happened. Like that's not even like that's like now history, and yet it's already so mythologized, at least for a large segment of the population, that who knows what that stuff is going to say in 100 years, that everyone at the time, just like mostly everyone now, is just going to take at face value because it's in the book.
Remember Pat Tillman?
Yo, I sure
Yeah,
do.
turned out
That's
Pat-
a good one. I mean, not a good one but
Yeah, Pat Tillman got murdered. He was saving his buddies and he got mowed down he was killed by friendly fire.
very clearly so as well.
They just created a lied, but then in the lie they mythologize them.
Mhm.
So that you don't want to argue against the lie because there's so much mythology to it.
And then it somehow morphs into, you can't criticize the war because then you're disrespecting Pat Tillman, who was murdered by the Afghanis.
Right. But the whole thing with Van Gogh is, why would you even? It doesn't even make any sense that anybody would be upset about this, or why it would. it just seems like something someone made up because, hey, we got to make this sound better than he got in a fight with some dude. You know?
Was he also the same one that supposedly took the absinthe? That was the Van Gogh too, like made all his paintings on absinthe, or is that someone else?
That I don't know.
Or is that me? That was me last week. All right, that's an interesting one. I had never really thought about it, but it's just like Helen Keller. If you just take a second to think about it, as I did just now, it's like, oh yeah, why would that happen?
Why would he do that?
All right, are you ready to kick it up a notch, Pete?
Sure.
I debated what to do with this one because I knew I would have something on my list in this realm, and I was really debating whether to go big or small, but I decided to keep it simple, and I decided to stick with one that everyone's pretty much heard at this point, whether they've seen it as a meme in a movie or a show or
Marc Claire just froze up. It's my stream now. Let's talk about the hold on. Mark's saying he just lost power and it came back on. So he's the stream. Yeah. He's asking, is the stream still going? Yeah, you can come right back on, Mark. Waiting for Mark to come back in. So what can I say to get Mark's channel nuked? What do I got? Okay, so if someone ordered if someone ordered 6 million cookies and you only had 4 ovens to cook, no, damn. Hold on, he's texting me. He's waiting for his internet to kick back in because he lost power. Talk about how the shoes on the Damn is a lie everyone believes. I mean, come on. And then people are saying, oh, well, they took those shoes and who bought, not who sold the shoes, who bought those shoes? I mean, were they taking them and giving them to their girlfriends? I mean, can any guy imagine going home and giving a used pair of shoes to their wife or girlfriend? Come on. Dustin says the importance to have a UPS for backup power on all your internet and PC infrastructure. Very much so. JY, despite being 13% of the population, I mean, I don't. Oh yeah. Oh, Thomas is a very very level-headed. Very level-headed. Oh. Believe me, I talked to him privately. Thomas is a really good guy. They wouldn't fit unless you had hooves. I'm just watching that. And I'm like, here's the thing about it is, why are they so intent on? It's like they go looking for atrocities. It's atrocity porn. It's like, oh, they stood up on the banks of the river, made them take their shoes off, and I've been doing my best to try and get you kicked off of YouTube.
Right. I have no strikes on this channel yet, so I did this show with the idea that I'm willing to risk one in mind.
Okay.
I am currently on my for everyone at home. My power just went out, came back on. My internet has still not restarted. So because, of course, the one time I do a live stream, right? So now I'm using my phone's internet to stream this. So we'll see how it goes. But thank you for keeping the ship going, Pete. What did I miss?
Oh, we were talking about
Pizzagate. Do we get into Pizzagate?
No, we were talking about this these people who this post this morning on about how those 1940s Germans made women stand up on the side of the Danube, take their shoes off, and then they mowed them down. And we're like, well, why would they make them take their shoes off? They're like, well, because they sold them. I'm like, to who? And it's like, who's buying used shoes?
To other women.
Yeah, and who's taking used shoes home to their like wife or girlfriend who's not expecting to get kicked in the nuts? I mean,
All right. Well, that threw me off my game for a minute. Not that I have game, Pete, but you know what I mean. So let's
I
get
think
back to
you're-
things. I'm going to adjust my lighting.
yeah.
We'll be back. All right. So I was actually interesting timing, Pete, though, because I was just about to get interesting, you know.
All right, let's do this.
So, all right. I think I'm back. I'm back at full capacity. So as I was saying, I was debating, let's see if this happens again. I was debating whether to go broad with this one, because I certainly could go very broad on the topic. But really the idea of this list anyway is just to inspire some conversations. That's what we're going to do here. But I'm going to be very specific with this one to cover my bases. All right. Be very specific. My number 3 lie that nearly everyone believes is that the United States televised a successful moon landing live in 1969.
100%
I'm
do
wearing
it.
the shirt. I've been hiding the shirt, I think, behind
Do
the
it.
microphone. I'll show. So
It's the biggest bullshit story I've ever heard in my life. Once you start looking into it,
again, it falls right under the category of all of these. Just spend 2 seconds thinking or looking at it, and then just forget what all the professors and like your teacher, forget all that. Use this. I think there's one thing we learned over the last 3 years. Oftentimes your gut and what you see and feel is way more fucking right than what the professors and the scientists and the textbooks say for a reason. All right. Doesn't mean everything. You could have a gut instinct that's totally crazy. Don't get me wrong. I might have a gut instinct that's totally crazy. Again, as my disclaimer said, it's possible I'm wrong about all of this, but I really don't think so, especially on this one. Where do you even start with the moon landing? There are so many places to start.
The capsule, like
that's a good place.
Like Owen Benjamin says, it looks like a treehouse a crackhead built.
Just look at the fucking thing for 2 seconds and think about, like, especially when you actually hear like quote unquote real scientists talk about, man, I'm still trying to get this lighting just right. Talk about, who cares? I get obsessed with the wrong things sometimes. But I think that's a little better. All right, we're going with this. How do I look? Live streams, baby. Where do you even start? Speaking of live streams, all right, this is a great example. This is actually a perfect segue. See how the internet just went down, and I'm in Florida and you're in Alabama, and we had a little connection issue because the power glitched for just 1 second. Yet, and I mean, how many people have had Zoom calls? But yet, perfect, though delayed by 45 seconds. Perfect human speech transmitted from the fucking moon in 1969, like to TV. What the fuck are you talking about?
To a landline. To a landline in the White House.
It's so fucking absurd. Yes, just look at the fucking little tinfoil craft if you like. You can go in so many different directions. Now, this is one, I feel like it's become more popular of an online topic for me, but this is one that people used to even joke about. There's movies that reference this as sort of a joke because I actually think it's one of those ones that is so incredibly fucking obvious that it's kind of one of these things that they immediately put the fakery into pop culture so that it becomes part of pop culture, so that it immediately becomes one of those things like, oh, the fake moon landing. Oh, that's what they said in that movie. You're thinking of that movie where they stumbled upon the set and yeah, because that's why they put that stuff in there, because when it's that absurd, you almost like, if you're the propagandist, you kind of just have to like lean into the absurdity and like make it part of the culture so that it gets muddied enough that people just start to think that the conspiracy is actually just all based on the parodies and not based on the fact that the thing is fucking absurd in the first place. Today, NASA still says, we're just trying to figure out this Van Allen radiation belt thing. Once we can get that going, we can send people out of space to Mars. But I thought we already figured that out to send them to we have to and then they say that first of all, the original film taped over it. Sorry guys, taped over that one. Bomb had a fucking birthday party and they just grabbed the nearest reel and they popped it in. They didn't realize, all the telemetry data. I think we sold it at a garage sale. We're not really sure. There are like 100 things that just don't fucking add up about it. Let alone the fact that if we went there in the 4 times in between, I think 69 and 73, don't you think we would have gone back once, or some other country would have gone back once, or anything like that? One of my favorite sort of comebacks to this thing is, and really a lot of like large conspiracies is, well, but think about how many people would have had to be in on it. First of all of NASA and all of this stuff is so compartmentalized. It's like, okay, go punch your numbers in this thing, Jimmy, and you did your part of, go punch your numbers in that thing, Timmy. And then, so there could be a whole bunch of people that did some things that are then told, that was a very essential part of the moon mission. Good job. And then they go around, they're like, I was essential. No, I worked at that. I did the thing that, and then they're like, oh yeah, you did. Hey, my cousin did that. So what are you talking? You know, and this is, so you get a bunch of people that are doing quote unquote legitimate work. It's not like tens of thousands of people are like, all right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna fake a moon landing. No, most people think that they're working on a real fucking moon landing because most of these people that they recruit are autistic nerds that are just excited to see a fucking screen flashing that they did good, and they're going to get a treat now. So it's beyond obvious that I don't even know. Oh, that's not true. I shouldn't say I don't even know what to point out as the biggest one, because I have 2 pieces of evidence with me, Pete. Now, unfortunately, before the power went out, I did have 3 tabs open on my computer that actually displayed some of my evidence. So I don't know if we're going to get that back, but you know what? What I'm going to show you right now might actually be, first of all, I'm going to do a little search off my screen, and then I'm going to share it, because I think at the end of the day, we really only need 1 piece of evidence, to be honest. There's a lot of stuff I can get into. We really only need 1. And let me just try to do a quick little screen share screen. Boom, 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 share. You see my screen here? All right, there we go. I think this is all the evidence we actually need, because the actual story, Pete, is that the moon landing was accomplished because this nerdy chick wrote the code on these piles of paper that then were entered into the computer guidance system that sent people to the moon. Do I really need to provide anything else, or is this enough? Are we good here? This is the real story, Pete. Just like 3 black ladies got their shit together and sent the dude around the earth or whatever. Then this nerdy white chick typed all of those papers. Then I think she puts it in the fax machine, and then moon landing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not to mention, if you look at a lot of the footage, like the footage from the moon, or like have you ever seen Owen Benjamin?
Oh, we got a comment I just have to reply to. It'll be interesting to see how people who think the 1970s landings were fake react to Artemis 2 and 3. Yep, those things that haven't gone anywhere near the moon, that haven't gone to the moon yet, that keep having issues, that keep having launch problems. Anyway, moving on.
Well, I mean, let's see it. Let's see it happen.
Let's go.
Was the video that Owen Benjamin put on his Twitter feed of the module of Apollo 11 taking off from the moon from a camera that panned up perfectly.
Right.
And apparently
that might be the best smoking gun, to be honest. That's just.
And apparently that thing goes up, and like in a matter of seconds, it's supposed to go to like 2,000 miles an hour.
Let alone the landing. I mean, the landing is supposedly happening, but the fucking moon is the moon is supposedly spinning, and they're like, oh, okay, we're on the moon now. Let's go play golf. Let's go play. That's the story too. Owen Benjamin likes to say this a lot too. He's like, you're telling me I'm supposed to believe that a bunch of Freemasons went to the moon and played golf? Like,
I mean, it was just
in somewhat seriousness. There is one thing that I had queued up that might be a little hard for me to find right now, so I'll just tell people where to find it. There's a documentary, and I saw this in, I think, 2007, 2008. That's when I went from thinking maybe there's something weird with the moon landing to like 100%. It's very obviously faked. It's a film called a funny thing happened.
Happened on the way to the moon.
Right.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. I think it's 37 minutes in. So I remember the time code. I'm just not going to go pull it all up again. There's a portion, if you've seen it, you might know what I'm talking about, where they're inside this camera, this the supposed space capsule. They're supposed to be like at the moon at this point, and they see the shot of the camera, and you see, well, the part that they were supposed to release, you see what kind of looks like a globe Earth, like shaded by, what I guess the other side of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
But they accidentally released some other footage where they don't have it quite right. And you can see them framing up the camera around, they're framing a filter over a hole in their spacecraft. And they move it, and you realize they are not out in space near the moon. They're right here. They're they're essentially inside the atmosphere. They're in the very upper atmosphere, and they just did a little filter around it to turn like a very small portion of the Earth into looking like they are far away looking at the ball. And then someone's arm goes in front of the camera. I mean, it's absurd. And this is actual NASA footage that was released with a Freedom of Information Act thing, I think. And it's clearly like they have all these clips of footage that are supposed to be there. And there's like this one that probably shouldn't have been in the archive that they let out, because there's even like, they got to frame it up and like all this stuff, and this is taking place. The footage is labeled the day that they're supposed to be at the fucking moon. So like, it's because part of their explanation was, oh, that was practice. Like that we were rehearsing for the shot for when we're really out there. But that's not how it was portrayed when they showed it on TV. And that's not how they ever portrayed this footage. And that doesn't line up with the date on the footage. And it's really, really obvious when you see that they were not anywhere near where they say they were.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, Louis P says it's kind of suspicious that they allow that doc to be on YouTube. They allow that doc to be on YouTube because you watch it, you know that what's in there is true, but then you get called a kook. You start talking about that. If they want people to be labeled as kooks, they have to allow certain information to stay out there, even if it's true. I mean, they're going to deny it until they've already like admitted that the Gulf of Tonkin incident didn't happen. And most people think it happened. I mean,
and they have to like, there's really only two things they can do with stuff like this. They can go hardcore censor and like censor the truth, which it looks suspicious. I mean, it just happened in the last couple of years too. Like everybody knew when they censored something, what that meant. It meant that thing had some truth to it that they wanted to hide. So the other tack they can take is let it not only just allow it there, but flood the place with that and all the nonsense and so much nonsense. So it all gets wrapped up into just the realm of nonsense conspiracy. Because there are a lot of moon landing films with dumb, flimsy evidence in it. So they allow all that to be up there. So it does get meddled. I think a funny thing happened on the way to the moon is the best moon landing documentary that's been done. I think it has some of the best like evidence. And to me, that one scene alone, that and the fucking chick that did the code are like the two smoking guns, and like 10 other things. Go watch the press conference. If you just want another gut reaction one, go watch the press conference of the astronauts afterwards. Dude, these guys are like MK Ultra. They are like out of it.
Oh yeah. You watch like somebody who, the Stanley Cup playoffs is going on right now. Whoever wins the cup, looks like Las Vegas is going to win friggin' shit. When that last game, when that buzzer goes off, they're going to be celebrating. They're going to be jumping up and down. They're going to be carrying the cup all over the place. 3 guys come back from going to a friggin', going 240,000 miles in orbit, and they can't smile.
No fucking ticker tape parade for those guys.
Yeah, there's no ticker tape, no smile. They're up there. They are stone faced. It is.
There are wildly inconsistent stories from the various astronauts too over the years. Some say they saw a beautiful, brilliant star. Some say you couldn't see a single star. I mean, there's just no consistency to any of this thing. And I think honestly, the only reason that most people believe it is because, just like with the last few years, I guess we'll call it, sometimes I think it's really hard for people to accept a big lie when it's so big that it shatters their reality. Like I long ago accepted that most of what we're told is a lie or a manipulation of some kind. So to me, it's like just adding another thing is no big deal. But to a lot of people, that's actually like world shattering and could really just really break their own matrix. So I think a lot of people just can't take that leap, whether it's the moon landing or a dozen other things. They're always going to go, well, no, that's ridiculous, without anything to cite or without just because the only evidence being seen it in books, headlines. How could it be everywhere if that wasn't true? Come on. That's the only evidence.
You got a really cool comment from John Carter down. He said he can't hang chat in the chat long, but loved the show and wanted to encourage Marc to keep pressing on despite the bullshit he's been subjected to this year.
Well, thanks, brother. I've had a pretty good year, but I think the sentiment is accurate.
Yeah.
It was a rough couple of years, so thank you very much. I appreciate that.
It was a rough time.
This year's been awesome.
I think Monica Perez makes a really good point about the moon landing. I think Monica believes it didn't happen. She said in the context of like the Cold War, she calls it a noble lie, like Plato's noble lie. It's like, to make us feel like we were defeating the commies. And then people will be like, I know somebody asked earlier, Steve Clare asked earlier, said, but
Claire, is that my cousin?
But he said that if it didn't happen, and he was being facetious, if it didn't happen, the Russians would have called us out. Well, the Russians didn't go there either. Neither did the Chinese. If you've ever seen the footage,
the point is it's all fake, everybody.
Yeah. If you've ever seen the footage that the Chinese put out, I mean, if I have
cartoon,
if I could do share screen, if I could figure out how to do share screen, I got a good one, but let me see. It might not let me because
it's like browser dependent.
Oh, there it is. Let's check it out. Let's see. Yeah. You see it?
Yeah. And then I have to add it. You have to add it to the stream. I can do it here. There you go.
You got it? Yeah. The let's see, like this is the Chinese footage.
Here, I think you can big screen it within that if you hit that. Yeah. There we go. This is why you need to hit. If you're listening to the audio, I recommend the YouTube for some of these visuals.
Secrets of the ages.
Who's taking the picture?
Studied and deciphered by the scientists of Earth.
I mean,
it's the guy in the other ship, right? That's
the age of the moon.
Enough said. It doesn't make any sense. And I think there's another one here that's even. Yeah, this one's even worse. Let me share this one real quick because this is just absurd. But this is another one that they gave us, and this is from the Chinese. Can you see it?
I gotta add here. Let me add it to the. There we go.
这应该是谁的？
Look at the guy there.
我向你看我在讲什么？看什么？
Well, look at that. Look at the Earth.
相见不一样。
That's the
我
best.
们可以在
Why wouldn't the
这一
Chinese
说什么
call us out?
That is amazing. That is amazing. That is the worst animation I've ever seen.
I mean, why wouldn't the Chinese call us out?
Why wouldn't they? Yeah, why wouldn't they call us out and show us their evidence? Because everyone does this shit. Everyone has their own little mini money laundering scheme within their little country that pretends that they're doing shit up there. Now from this, I'm willing to go a lot of directions. Sure. I'm willing to think they can't do it. It's not possible. I'm willing to think that. I'm willing to think they can do it, and there's weird shit up there they don't want us to know about. So they put this whole aura of all the fake shit out there that people like us are going to see and create this whole argument when really there's this way more advanced thing. I'm willing to believe that too. I'm not going to claim to know the exact reasons. I do know NASA's absolutely a money laundering scheme, and most of what they do is create this fake stuff that says, look what we did with the billions of dollars. We made this. Did you see the asteroid one? The one where they supposedly put the missile into the nuke into the asteroid, or the missile into the asteroid?
No.
Oh man, I wonder if I can find it. Let me just try to find it, because if we can, it's absolutely absurd.
Wasn't that a Ben Still wasn't that a Bruce Willis movie?
Oh yeah, here it is.
With an Aerosmith soundtrack.
Oh this is gonna be. I know it's not on the stream yet, but I'll add it in just a second. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. This is why it's fun to do a live stream, Pete. All right.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna stop that screen, and then I'm gonna boof. All right, let's see. See the moment NASA's DART. You see this, Pete? It says added.
Yeah.
All right, great. See the moment NASA's DART spacecraft collides with an asteroid. All right, I think I can control it in. All right, let's see.
NASA is about to intentionally crash a.
We don't need to see this whole thing. Hold on. This is footage, by the way. I'm not. They're telling us this is footage.
What?
This happened, quote unquote, live.
That's from an Ed Wood movie.
Dude, this was on CNN as a real news event. It's getting closer. Oh my God, it's getting close. Oh my God, here comes the missile. Here it comes. Look, a bunch of autistic people about to fucking clap because they did it. They did it. We did it, guys. We did it. We put the numbers in the computers, and then it did this. Look at this. It's not even they said it was impact and that we're still getting closer to it, by the way. Oh, and now it blew up. We blew up the asteroid, everybody. Save the Earth.
I'm sure they believe that.
This was like 2 months ago. This is like they're still putting this crap out. It's just new iterations of it. To me, that might be more bold than the moon landing. Like that is just obvious shitty animation. Yeah. Like it's not even it's like they're not even trying, which is what disappoints me, I guess.
Well, the problem is if they use CGI that's
last
too
year,
good,
whatever.
Like Musk put his Tesla in space. I'm sure. Yeah, that wasn't CGI'd at all. No, not at all. If the CGI is too good, people can see through it. If it's too bad, that just looked like, that literally looked like something from like Plan 9 from outer space.
It's unbelievable. As Elon Musk would say, it's real because it looks so fake. As he said about his car in space, because that's the thing too. All right.
Well, he had how many hookers were in the trunk? That's the thing.
Space hookers. So I think we are ready to
go
to the number 2. Yeah, let's do it, Pete.
All right. This one's not so fun.
Oh no. We're gonna get real.
I think everyone knows exactly how much of a fan I am of the Anti-Defamation League.
We're gonna get real.
The ADL. And they came into existence.
You're saying you're pro-defamation?
I am.
Actually, yes.
They came into existence because a Jewish man in Atlanta named Leo Frank. This was back in, I think in 1910, 1920. Let me look it up real quick. So no, I can't never remember the year. 1913. That's right. I had it right in the first place.
I think they're Iroquois men.
Yeah. So he was accused of, he worked in I think he ran a factory. He was like a manager in a factory, worked there. And there was a 13-year-old girl named Mary Fagan who worked in the office. Different times, huh? 13-year-old girl can work in the office. No one's thinking anything about it. She ends up raped and dead. And he is arrested for it. And he is convicted. And it's very interesting because he tried to blame it on Leo Frank. Tried to say he didn't do it. It was actually somebody else who worked there, a black gentleman named Jim Conley. I think it was Jim Conley. Yeah, Jim Conley, who he did it. And so he was innocent. Well, they got involved, and they're like, it wasn't the black guy, it was this guy. And the KKK in 1913 is like, no, the black guy's innocent.
Yeah, if they're saying it, you might want to perk your ears up.
It's the other guy. So he, he's basically, he's tried, convicted, sent to jail, and the wealthy Jewish organization lobbies the judge to overturn the ruling.
Did the ADL already exist at this point?
No.
That's what I was wondering. This
is how it starts.
So what was the Jewish organization that you're talking? I mean, the Iroquois organization that you're talking about? It's just some other group of men.
Yeah, it was
guys with money who are Iroquois.
He was the head of Atlanta's B'nai B'rith. And by the American, it was called the American Jewish Community at that point. Okay, so they get him to overturn the judge overturns the ruling. Well, before they can let him out of jail, locals bust into the jail, take him out, and they hang him. And the ADL was formed because they say it was Jim Connolly. All the evidence points to Jim Connolly. There's no way Leo Frank could have done this. But Leo Frank is literally, when you look at the evidence, he's the only person who could have done this. He's the only person. And I can just start running down reasons why. First, he's the only one who had the opportunity to be alone with Mary Fagan. He admitted he was alone with her. Jim Connolly He was completely alone on the second floor with her. Had Jim Conley been the killer, he would have had to attack her practically right at the entrance of the building where he sat almost all day, where people were constantly coming and going. Leo Frank told Newt Lee, the pencil factory's night watchman, to come earlier than usual at 4 p.m. on the day of the murder, but Frank was extremely nervous when Lee had arrived. And he told Lee to go away and come back in 2 hours because Mary Fagan's body was dead inside the building. When Lee then suggested he could sleep for a couple more hours on the premises, there was a cot in the basement. Frank wouldn't let him in the building. When Lee returned at 6, Frank was even more nervous and agitated than 2 hours before. He was so nervous he couldn't operate the time clock properly. When he came out of the building around 6, he not only met Lee, but John Milton Gant, a former employee who was a friend of Mary Fagan. Lee said when Frank saw Gant, he visibly jumped back, appeared very nervous. When Frank returned home in that evening after the murder, he called Newt Lee on the phone and asked him if everything was all right at the factory, something he had never done before. A few hours later, Lee would discover the mutilated body of Mary Fagan in the basement. When police finally reached Frank after the body of Mary Fagan had been found, Frank emphatically denied knowing the murdered girl by name, even though he had probably interacted with her 100 times. And he had filled out her pay slip personally on approximately 52 occasions. When police accompanied Frank to the factory on the morning after the murder, Frank was nervous and shaking so badly that he couldn't even unlock the door. I mean, this is just, they will tell you, they will go, the ADL has gone to the mat on Twitter. I mean, I've seen Jonathan Greenblatt do this over and over again, and people just defending this guy, saying it wasn't him.
They're still doing that.
Yeah, they're still doing it. It wasn't him. Yeah, it was Jim Connolly. It was the black guy. The KKK hated Jews more than they hated black people. It's insane. The evidence just is overwhelming that this guy did it. And the ADL formed upon this. And, some people, here's where I'll go off into, conspiracy land. Some people believe that it was formed because, Gentiles are not going to convict a Jew. We're not going to allow it to happen. And the ADL goes to the mat now they become like just weird. I mean, talking about how
now it's like, if you're against abortion, you're anti-Semitic.
Yeah, if you're against abortion, you're anti-Semitic. If you're against trans people, you're anti-Semitic. I mean,
how it started, how it's going.
Yeah. This is an organization that was, founded for purportedly a good thing. Somebody a Jewish person got lynched in the South. Okay. But it's turned into basically anybody who has any criticism of anyone who's Jewish or anyone who says, dares to talk about the JQ.
It's been primarily used too, at least in U.S. politics, to just really smear anyone remotely critical of Israeli and U.S. foreign policy.
Right. And yeah, exactly. And it all started off of a lie that Leo Frank was this saint who, worked in this pencil factory, and this Schwarze who worked there was the one who, killed this girl and then somehow got together with the KKK to blame it on the Jewish guy. All right. Well, the evidence is just, I read you 6 notes. I have 100. I have 100 notes of why Leo Frank did it. Just proofs of how Leo Frank did it. So,
So then did they essentially take that model and go, wait a minute, we can do this with literally everything?
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, I don't really know. But the thing is they've gotten so ridiculous. I don't even really know how many people take them seriously anymore. Like I was, I forget what I was doing on Twitter, but somebody had, I think I had mentioned that like 30,000 Jews served in the Wehrmacht. Like the Wehrmacht had like 10 internet, there was like a Spanish a legion from Spain and a legion from, France, the Charlemagne division. And that like up to 30,000 Jews were fighting in the Wehrmacht against Russia and against England and the United States, and like somebody tagged the ADL on me.
That goes.
And they like tagged the ADL. Look at this anti-Semite. And my comment to them was, "Oh, please, no." They said, "Is this person on your anti-Semitic list?" And my response to that person was, "Oh, please don't make my day."
That would seem like a pro-Semitic thing. You're highlighting the good work of 30,000 Jews, right? That's how I would take it.
Yeah, and David Gleason makes a good point here. The FBI does take them seriously. Every agent is subjected to ADL training, and every FBI agent has to go to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. on their own dime before they can be sworn in.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. That is, I think it was our friend Rachel who called it, what do you say? MK Ultra for Jews, like like the Holocaust Museum. So it's interesting that they send the FBI agents to get their treatment as well.
And what's funny is if you go on and here's some more funny things. If you go on the website for the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., I don't know if it's still there, but I showed somebody a couple years ago. Even they debunked the lampshades made of skin, the soap, the bars of soap, the shrunken heads. They were debunking that on their own websites because it's so ridiculous, and people still, parrot that today. And I'm like, I'm one of
the torture devices. Once it's out there, it just kind of spreads.
Yeah, and I'm one of those people. It's like, look, if you lied about something, if it turns out you lied about something, I want to know what else you lied about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So so ADL, it started on, they lynched this poor innocent Jewish guy. I mean, the guy is guilty. There was more evidence that he did what he did than there was that John Hinckley shot Reagan, and Hinckley was caught at the scene.
Whew. All right. Well, that hoof is based on my next one. So are we ready?
Let's do it.
Again, this kind of falls in the category of almost too obvious, I feel like, but I try to think of, because I think in our realm, it goes both ways. Anyway, why don't I just say it and then I'll talk about it. Before I had one that I told you was 2 words. This one's just 3 numbers, 911. So when you call 911, what really happens is, no, that's not the conspiracy.
911 is a joke.
911 actually is a joke in my town. This one I don't know. There's actually a lot of people, including the guy I'm going to go see tonight, Jim Brewer, who on my show said that 9/11, he knew it from the beginning. It was just so obvious, so incredibly obvious.
I can still hear you. I'm going to go take a leak.
Okay, go for it. Okay. You've earned it. So I'll just monologue for a bit here. I'll just reference my interview with Jim Brewer for the people that are tuning in that might have become over from Pete's show that didn't know I interviewed comedian Jim Brewer, the same man whose stand-up comedy I'm going to get to see tonight. So I don't remember if it was in the main portion of the show or in our smoke-filled room with Jim, where he was talking about, I think it was the smoke-filled room. I think it was the bonus segment. So a lot of you might not have heard it. But yeah, where he just thought it was just so plainly obvious for so many different reasons. And I think for me, it was the first thing that sort of shook me. Let's see, I was 21 years old. I was in college, just woke up to someone saying, "Oh, put on the news," and the rest. But it shook me in a way that this is way before I had ever heard of the concept of a false flag or even had that conception that anything was really other than what we're told on TV. But it shook me in a way that it made me realize, oh, I don't know shit about what's going on in the world. And that was when I was still looking at it in sort of the material way or the baseline way we're looking at it. But I say a lot of people are sort of onto this one, but I don't know, even within our circles or former circles, whatever you want to call them, you still see the same line over and over. Well, how we should have really responded to the terrorists was, or, and there's still that. I mean, even Ron Paul will say, yes, it was blowback from the U.S. foreign policy and all this. And that line, even whether or not people believe it or not, I don't know, but people are still generally speaking as if it was genuinely and as presented. And I think if you talk to most normies, the vast majority of people just think it is as presented. Where to start? Again, this is this is above the moon landing because I think it's almost more obvious. Really, if you can, I think it's more obvious, but maybe harder for anybody to accept and wrap their heads around. And the problem with 9/11 is there's so many aspects to it too. There's like there's different incidents. There's just, if you think there's a lot of moon landing theories, holy fuck, start researching 9/11 theories. Again, I think this is one of the biggest examples of, again, there's two options: censor it or flood the market. And 9/11 is one where they have flooded the fucking market. There is everything from space lasers to holographic airplanes to fucking time travel to it's insane how much there is out there. I don't know if it makes sense to actually play the video or not. I think it's probably easier just to talk about it, because I don't know if this is the biggest of all the smoking guns I could point out, but one that really stands out to me and always has is how the BBC reported the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7 live on TV 23 minutes before it happened, with the building in the background. Now, think about all the ways that could accidentally happen. First, they would have to have an idea that a building would collapse after a plane crashed into some buildings next to it, which is not a thing that even towers getting hit by planes had never collapsed that way, let alone a building next to it collapse. People, just forget everything you've been told. All right, forget everything you've been told. Go look at a video of construction, of a controlled demolition of like a construction site, and then go look at that video of Building 7 and tell me it's not the same fucking thing. Or look at the other two and think the same thing.
I've actually had people, I said, look, it falls right into its own footprint. And people are like, no, it doesn't. Okay. I used to really like watching, demolitions and stuff like that, and watching controlled demolitions, how they just fell, straight through, straight down, and I mean, when I saw that, I mean, I know fires and, yeah.
Henry's got to get is kind of what I'm onto here too. Like, the useful idiot kookism. Like, yeah, there's so many issues with the official story, but it's always that crazy shit that's used. So it's always the space lasers and the holographic planes or whatever that's used to discredit what is some very, very obvious, issues. Like, for example, magical passport. You're telling me a guy who hijacked a plane and flew it into a building, his passport flew out the window and landed at the feet of an FBI agent intact. And that's how we know. And that's how we got all the information. Everything leads to Muhammad Atta and then everything from there. So that's the basis of all of the whodunit, essentially. Really? That might be crazier than tinfoil pod on the moon. I don't know. I mean, that might be even, I can maybe believe some scientists figured out how to put tinfoil on a fucking tin can and send it to a moon. I can't believe a passport survived something that was an explosion that was so intense that it's, for the first time ever, chugga, 2 buildings and a building next to it. But the passport was fine. Maybe he had a really good passport case. Some of those are pretty sturdy, but to me, there's so many, there's 100 legitimate issues that I'm not going to claim to know the exact thing that all went down that day, but it's very clearly a planned not just psychological part of it, certainly, because fear is the whole point of this stuff. It's clearly a planned operation. I think it's one that was too big, and that's why we haven't seen too much like that anymore. Boy, those 9/11 widows were really fucking loud and trying to get to the bottom of things, and then at some point, a few $1 trillion came into play, and suddenly they weren't really talking anymore. So there were people looking into this. I think they realized that's a little too hard. So, as people who saw my interview with Ole Damagard might opine, now they like to do stuff without as many real victims, so to speak. So no matter your take on it, I don't know how anybody can apply, much like with the moon landing. I don't know how anybody could actually look at the facts of the day and remotely dream up a world where it's Helen Keller-esque to me, Pete, how absurd it is.
Yeah.
The only reason I think it's harder for people to believe, because at the end of the day, it's like you could believe that Helen Keller is created as the propaganda piece, or even that they did the moon landing to win the Cold War and then the psychological and the propaganda war or what have you. And you could tell yourself that's relatively harmless because no one's hurt. It's just regular propaganda. Whereas this is actual destruction on a mass scale that even if you could accept that other type of propaganda, this one you really have to accept true evil in its darkest fucking form, which again I did some time ago, so I'm good. But I think for a lot of people it's hard to accept that. And I don't know if Bush quote unquote did 9/11. I don't know if Bush knew shit about it, to be honest. He's probably just a president is such a low level patsy, I think, in all this stuff, no matter what we're talking about. So I don't know if Bush knew anything. He might be what he was, shocked at when he was reading that book and not knowing what the fuck to do. Totally buy that. So I think that's like one of the sort of, debunks the crate like that they put out there. Like, oh, you're telling me that dummy planned it? No, I don't know. Probably did have some connection to it. He probably didn't have no idea, but I don't think he planned it. No, but clearly it was planned by, and not in the way that it was told to us on the television, as is often the case with these things.
Well, there was a lot of weird stuff that happened that day. Bush got members of the Saudi royal family out of the country, got members of Osama bin Laden's family out of the country. The plane in Pennsylvania is one that's no one really looks into. That's just, considered to be like the hero thing. Oh, they made a movie about it and everything.
What was it? Let's roll or whatever was the tagline.
And it's just, Ryan Dawson says that, the Israelis had gone into the towers, had been disabling the fire suppression
Iroquois.
system. Yeah, in the towers. There's a lot going on there, and I'm fully convinced. I mean, I'm way beyond the respectable going to end up on Fox News or even probably RT. So I'm willing to say that there is just all sorts of fuckery going on with that thing. I don't believe in
hey, Jesse Ventura got on RT even after saying the same things.
Yeah. I don't believe in missiles or holograms and everything. I mean, I think that's the real kookery to make people seem insane. Because as soon as you start questioning 9/11, people bring up the craziest shit they've ever heard.
Oh, there weren't really planes, that. And I think again, that stuff is what's intentionally, I don't know if it's just allowed or it may be created just to flood the market with on purpose to sort of, obfuscate the stuff.
Well, and also let's not forget, a couple things. James Corbett has a great 5-minute video on 9/11 that everyone should watch.
It's like, I don't know the number. It's like whatever number of things that like are obvious lies of 9/11 or whatever. Yeah, that is a really good succinct one that it's like you can refute any of that, but have a blast.
He also has a really good video on the people who came to be known as the dancing Israelis.
Dancing Indians, as the Degenerate Society called it. And Dancing Iroquois is going to be our new
doing their rain dance. And there's just so much out there. But I think that, I was talking about how, it's like, I'm never going to be considered to be mainstream or get on any mainstream outlet. So I don't really care. But I think that a lot of people who probably have really good questions about 9/11, because they're mainstream, they're just not going to take the chance of having their, their income or their reputation tarnished by buying into something that, it's just, it's one of those things. I've come to just be like, we're never going to know. Maybe we'll know one day who, but it's just the why is really what's important. Why did this happen? And then when you look at what's happened since then, I mean, you will have people say, well, it's impossible. The government would never kill its own people. If the government did this, it would never kill its own people. Well, I mean, would never. I mean, well, look at what they've done for January 6th. Look at what they've done sending
their own strike.
Yeah. Sending people over to, sending soldiers over to fight, things had nothing to do with this. I mean, Osama bin Laden, sure, he was in Afghanistan, and then he, as soon as the Americans shut up, he left, but they stayed in Afghanistan anyway. it never had anything to do with Iraq. It went to Iraq.
For the Stargate. That's not
yeah.
the theory we need to go to right now.
Well,
That's my number one.
Just, I mean, unless stuff gets declassified, we'll never know. And then how do we know that that's true?
Yeah, I mean, that's the same way I think about like JFK declassification now, or UFO declassification, any of this stuff. I just presume the declassification is part of the op too, So it's like, I don't think anyone outside of God and maybe a few other actual humans that lived could actually know the full scope of how that all really went down. So It's one of those quest for knowledge things that I think, I'm as guilty as anyone, where I just feel like I always got to get to the truth and know the exact details. And, and at some point you got to realize I'm not going to know all the thing, but I can detect some bullshit. So maybe that's all I need to know.
Yeah.
You ready?
9/11 is one where we can go for hours.
Yes. And I probably will in the future. I think I briefly talked about it with Charlie Robinson back in episode 3, but not in great detail. So it's definitely worthy of its own deep dives. Because as much as I've gone down on the rabbit holes on these things, I am ultimately, the reason I do the show is because I do want to reach some normies, so to speak, and sort of crack open some matrices a bit. So yeah, I always forget that there's, for whatever rabbit hole I've gone down, there's even if it's been for 20 years, there's someone that hasn't even seen the hole, and doesn't even know it's there. All right, number 1, Pete, you ready? I'm excited. I want to see what you got.
Well, it's Frank's back to back.
You did it.
We're going to talk about Anne Frank.
He did it, everybody.
And we're going to talk about what a bullshit story that whole thing is.
I'm surprised they didn't make her deafblind and dumb too.
Yeah,
just to wrap it all up in one package.
Let's talk about her dad, Otto Frank. Otto Frank came from upper class German Iroquois, wealthy family. Went to exclusive schools in Frankfurt, prep schools, went to Lessing Gymnasium, which was the most expensive school in Frankfurt, attended Heidelberg University. After graduation, he left for a long vacation in England. In 1909, he was 20 years old. He went to New York City, where he stayed with his relatives, the Oppenheimers.
Oh, really? I never knew that. Wow, what a interesting, random, and in no way related connection.
I mean, it's just, oh yeah, they're just this poor family that no one knows anything. It's just, okay, maybe. In 1925,
Have you done an episode on this, or is this your independent?
No, this is
my free time, Mark.
About this. So yeah,
this is what I do after the show.
So Otto met his wife 1929. Anne's born 1925. Anne's born 1929. The Franks family business included banking, management of the springs at Bad Saden, and the manufacture of cough drops. Anne's mother, the former Edith Hollander, was the daughter of a manufacturer. In 1934, Otto and his family moved to Amsterdam, where he bought a spice business, Opetka, which manufactures pectin, which is used and made. You use it for making household jellies. My wife would probably know a lot about that. On May 1940, after the Germans occupied Amsterdam, Otto remained in the city while his mother and brother moved to Switzerland. Otto remained in Amsterdam, where his firm did business with the German Wehrmacht.
Wow.
From 1939 to 1944, Otto sold Opetka and pectin to the German army. Pectin was a food preservative and an anti-infectant balm for wounds and as a thickening for raising blood volume in blood transfusions. Pectin was used as an emulsifier for petroleum, gelatinized gasoline for firebombing. By supplying the Wehrmacht, Otto Frank became, in the eyes of the Dutch, a collaborator. So on July 6, 1942, Otto moves.
I can't believe they would take that position.
Yeah. On July 6, 1942, Otto moves the Frank family business to the so-called secret annex. The annex is a three-story, mostly glass townhouse that shares a garden park with 50 other apartments. While they're in quote-unquote hiding, Otto Frank still manages his business, going downstairs to his office at night and on weekends. And then the others would go to Otto's
Because
office.
they never come around to check on the weekends.
Yeah. And then the others would go to Otto's office and listen to radio broadcasts from England. The alleged diary starts on June 12th, 1942, and runs to December 5th, 1942. It consists of a book that is 6 by 4 by 1/4 inches. In addition to this first diary, Anne supplemented it with personal letters. Otto said Anne heard Garrett Bolkenstein in a broadcast say, "Keep a diary," and he would publish it after the war. And that's why Anne's father claimed she rewrote her diaries for a second time in 1944. And the second,
she rewrote them?
Yeah.
I thought you took diaries. That was the whole point. It's like at the time,
Yeah. In the second edition, the new writer changed, rearranged, and occasionally combined entries of various dates. When Anne rewrote the diaries, she used a ballpoint pen, which didn't exist in 1945. And the book took on an extremely high literary standard and read more like professional documentary than a child's diary. In the second edition, her writing style and handwriting suddenly got better. The actual diary...
It's a miracle, a Helen Keller-esque miracle.
Yeah. The actual diary contained only about 150 notes. The New York Times wrote that in October 2nd, 1955. Here's where, the story escalates. In 1944, German authorities in occupied Holland determined that Otto Frank had been swindling them via his extensive and very lucrative Wehrmacht contracts. Somebody in hiding from the Wehrmacht, who's doing business with them, is going to start to try to cheat them. Is that what we're supposed to believe?
I suppose.
The German police then raided his apartment attic, and the 8 Iroquois that were found there were sent to...
That's weird that they got all the way over there. Yeah.
Were sent to Westerbork work camp and forced to perform manual labor. Otto himself was sent to Auschwitz, and her sister Margot and her mother subsequently died of typhus in another camp. What people won't tell you is that Anne Frank died in a hospital that the Germans manned because she got typhus, and they took her to the hospital. This little Jewish girl,
to make sure she died right.
Yeah. In 1945, after being liberated from German custody, Otto returned to Amsterdam, where he claimed he found Anne's diary cleverly hidden in the annex's rafters. However, there's another version. A Dutch friend, Mike Gijs, said finding Anne's diary of whatever she wrote in there, which she then gave it to Otto. So there's 2 different stories of how this diary even came into existence. Otto then claimed that Anne's letters and notes Otto took what he claimed were Anne's letters and notes, edited them into a book, which he gave to his secretary, Isa Covern, to review. Isa Covern and her husband, Albert Covern, a writer, authored the first diary. They basically rewrote it. So then questions were raised by some publishers as to whether Isa and Albert, who assisted Otto in typing out the work and used the original diaries, or whether they took the book directly from Otto's personal transcription. An American author, Meyer Levin, wrote the 3rd and final edition. He was an author, a journalist who lived in France lived for many years in France, where he met Otto Frank around 1949. Mr. Levin, born in 1905, was raised in the section of Chicago notoriously known as the gangster, in the days of gangster warfare, as the Bloody 19th Ward. Age of 18, he worked as a reporter for Chicago Daily News, and during the next 4 years became an increasingly frequent contributor to the national literary magazine, the Menorah Journal. In 1929, he published The Reporter, which was the first of his 16 novels. Basically, he wrote a book that actually became very famous and released in 1956 called Compulsion, which chronicled the Leopold and Loeb case. It was called one of the greatest books of the decade. It's considered to be the first like nonfiction novel, like a documentary novel. Then he wrote a trilogy of novels dealing with the Holocaust. And
You might actually be the world's foremost expert on this now.
I mean, look, I don't care. Anyone who's ever read it and believes a 13-year-old girl wrote that, I mean, believes that Helen Keller, did everything she did.
Believes everything we've talked about today.
Now, and and some will say, like, so here I can just hear the why, if he did something, why did his whole family get sent to work camps? In the United States, we were sending whole families to work camps just for being Japanese.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not like they were doing business
here
in the United States. This was in the United States on American land. They spent whole family, famously, what's his name? George Takei says he was born in one of those or something, like that. I mean, it's another bullshit story. I mean, could it all be true? Could it be? Maybe, but
yeah. As with all of these, they could all be true.
How many
boy would it be crazy?
How many people knew that Otto Frank was doing business with the Wehrmacht?
This is the first time I heard it.
I mean, okay, and then he decides, and I had somebody on Twitter said that, oh, well, he was forced to do business with the Wehrmacht. Was he forced to cheat them? Mm. If you're being forced, why would you cheat them? Well, they could have just said that they cheated him. There were people that the Wehrmacht did business with. I used to work for a company that did business with, well, not the Wehrmacht,
Bayer?
with the SS, with Hitler's Germany. They weren't forced to do it. They did it because that's where they were. That's what you did. Mm-hmm. It's just stories like, you hear the story of Anne Frank, the way it's told, the narrative, and you're like, I have to read this diary. And it's another diary that they tell you to read as a kid. Mm-hmm. Try reading it as an adult and tell me a 13-year-old girl hiding in an attic wrote that.
It's right along the lines of, again, Helen Keller having very strong opinions about politics and women's rights when she can't even comprehend reality. Yeah,
she has no. I mean, yeah, she's this arch. She's an arch advocate of communism. What she read The German Ideology by Marc.
Tickle hands.
Yeah. then the Jewish N-word. And
then the Iroquois.
I mean,
that's a good one, Pete, because while when you say it, because you kind of like coyly mentioned it sort of when we were talking about this, and I was like, oh yeah, without thinking further about it, I just immediately went, oh yeah, that probably is fake, but that is the first time I've really heard the details, and yeah, it's more obvious than ever, and with your thorough research.
It's like, come on, it's like, what are we talking about here? The guy was openly doing business voluntarily with the Wehrmacht, and why wouldn't he? It's during a war,
right?
You know how much businesses make during businesses who produce anything that can be used during wartime make during wartime? Of course he did. Why would he try and cheat him? And if he's doing business with them, why are they hiding in an attic? I don't know.
Whenever I think of Anne Frank, I think of the Family Guy scene where Peter Griffin is just eating chips next to her. But now I'll think of this whole tale.
I think of Doug Stanhope. He, in one of his stand-ups, he's like ragging on somebody, and he's like, "You're a real piece of shit. You would have bought Anne Frank a drum kit."
All right, Pete.
Number one.
We are here. We have arrived. This is the one that I might lose people, right, Pete? I might. I might even lose many of the people that are just happily joking along with us about in the comments in the live stream here. It's quite possible. And I really had to think about this one and whether to put it even on the list. But then when I really think about it in the grand scope, it actually fits. It actually fits this in many ways. And it also fits the nearly everyone believes in many ways, because even the people that shouldn't believe in it based on their own religious faith or what have you, you spend 2 minutes talking to them, get into the weeds. They all tend to work it all in there. And I wouldn't really mind it as just a theory. I guess I'll just say it. Pete, my number one lie, the theory of evolution.
I thought you were going to say the crucifixion. I was like,
oh,
please don't do that.
Damn, that could have been a spicy one. That would have really rubbed against my Ortho Bro audience for sure. This is one that, like, I put it number one because of the grand scope of it, because of how big it is, and because I think there's a lot of people that would be with me on the first four, and then would be like, "Cool, come on, man, come on." So here's my spiel, I guess. You're going to tell me, and this is one of those things too. It all falls in the same category at the end of the day. It's like, this is something I was told as a kid. It was in all my books. It makes sense because everyone said it makes sense, and I never thought about it deeply. So it's always just been what I accepted. And then you spend, I don't know, 7 minutes looking into it, and maybe it takes more than Helen. Maybe she's like 2, and maybe this is like 7 or 8 minutes. And you break down the theory. Now people will say, well, it's a theory. But they also say, they defend it as, well, no, it's not just a theory. It's a scientific theory. And that's why it is presented essentially as fact in school, in growing up. I wouldn't really mind it if it was just presented as one of many insane fucking theories about the origin of life and mankind or what have you. So what the theory is here, well, I guess if we're going to go all the way back, we're going to go all the way back. Nothing existed, or something existed. Something was a block of something, and then for no reason at all.
Where'd that come from?
It was just there, for no reason at all. That exploded because that happened, and everything's been expanding since then. And then some of that stuff turned into like dust, and some of that dust curled up in a ball and became the earth, and now it's been spinning around. And then some of that dust spinning around, falling down there, turns into this soup. Pete, the soup. It's the goo, the primordial soup. And what is that? It's just a bunch of stuff. All right. Spinning around, molten lava. And then one day, for no reason at all, DNA exists. And suddenly we have a cell or something. We have some kind of something we might call life now. And then some of the cells, they evolve. How does that work? We don't know. We haven't thought about that, and we don't care to, because that's not in the theory. It just happens. It just happens randomly. And then when it happens to that one cell randomly, I guess the rest die. And then that cell creates the rest of life. And this just continues in this random series of chance that ultimately ends up forming DNA strands that has codes of data stored within us that helps us replicate ourselves. And it really is that simple. And how could you not just accept that on its face? Now, like many people who are very into the science and the things of this matter might come in with this and that, and look at the skulls, they'll say, because that's one of the big ones. All the science guys they'll say, well, if evolution's not true, then explain this, and they'll point to just a row of skulls. I'm like, all right, what'd you prove? That skulls exist. You prove that a bunch of skulls. You prove that things exist. That things have existed over time. Strawberries exist. Cheese exists. I exist. You zoom in on them with a microscope. Oh my God! Look at all that stuff. That's the same, because the building blocks of life are the same. Essentially, if you look at any organic matter deep enough, just like you did with just like they did during the sniffles, we looked at all that, we spun it all around a billion times, and then oh look, there it is. Same thing. We spin it all around. We look in the cells. Oh my God, it's the same. That means I'm the cousin of a strawberry. That's what it means. And we know that because we've been able to test it never, ever in any way, shape, or form. But we know that, and we just put that out there. And and the reason I put this on as number one is because even many people whose worldviews would go completely counter to that being true, you talk to them and they end up working it in. They end up, well, I'm religious. I believe in creation story. I'm not.
It happened in the 19th century, when, and they always do this, and it was really Protestantism, because
Peaches in here hammering the Protestants.
They
Self-inflicted wounds.
When evolution came out, people took it seriously. So it really started at Princeton, where you had a bunch of religious, scholars, theologians who sought to insert evolution into the creation story. And once you, I could just go. I could go on a
Well,
Protestant.
it's when you get these things like, oh, well, yeah, like when God said he created man, what we said like one day or whatever, but that really means a few billion years, because he just created the primordial. He created the Big Bang, maybe, and then that made the ooze. So in a way, he created man in his image of the no, like you cannot reconcile those two things. You just cannot. Well, you can. People try to, and they do it. And I think it's one of these things that's like, so why? And I don't think it's a lie in the sense that like I think that like most science people believe it, because they kind of just, it's the chain of scientism here. It just kind of gets passed down, and just like most people believe it, they believe it was sent down to them. They believe that was sent down to them. It's a new fucking theory, by the way. It's not like thousands of years old that we've known this. This is the 1800s, Charles Darwin, who, if you look into him a little bit and his connections and such, he's right connected in with all the elites that are really still running things today.
And pedophiles.
The elites, the pedophiles, they're all there. Very interestingly coinciding with the discovery of the dinosaurs, which I did consider putting on this list, but I figured that conversation could all be sort of roped into this, because it's really the same thing. It's, oh, look, we found a bone and it's next to some dust that this very inaccurate method that says is billions of years old. Therefore, all of this happened. Therefore, T-Rex. Therefore, this and that. And there's simply nothing but it's nothing but autistic art projects. It's fucking nerds having their fantasies. Dude, okay, I had one piece of evidence. I gotta leave in a few minutes because I gotta go see Jim Brewer. I just want to show you the fucking biggest autistic fantasy ever that they made. And this is why I made it number one, because it's presented as fact. It is presented as fact. It's presented as this is what happened. So that's why I put it as the biggest, because I think most people believe it. Even people that probably shouldn't. Let's see. Share screen. Oh, wait, no, that's not what I want to do. Bear with me, everybody. We're going to get there. Video file. That's what I wanted, because I already had this. Okay, let's figure out how the whale got made. We're gonna learn about that right now, Pete. Let's see.
What are we doing here?
Well, hey, I'm a
we
British kid.
Whale evolution.
Let's learn about science.
All marine mammals
It started as this
mammals,
dog thing.
including
That's how
whales.
whales.
Cargo
We're
shorts.
here to see Pakicetus. Wow, there it is.
That's why you gotta view the video.
Looks more like
I'm gonna fast forward
that
just a little
thing.
bit. Oh wait, you missed how it turned
As
into that.
evolves.
So he went into and now he's a crocodile, everybody.
Yikes.
That
I'm
just
not
this
getting
thing
in
is
the
a
water
crocodile,
with that thing.
and he's swimming along.
Ankylocetus does look
kind
like
of a
link
dog
between land
crocodile
animal
now.
and a whale, doesn't it?
This goes on
Yes,
for 3
also
minutes,
A Durados.
and eventually
That's huge.
this little guy,
cool.
just becomes a fucking whale. That's what happens. This is science, dude. This is what they fucking call science. Nowhere in existence
mammals
is there.
evolved
Do
from
they
land
have this
mammals,
creature?
including
Whale.
This creature, this
I
guy.
see.
They don't have any of this,
Pterodactyl.
Pete. This is fucking fantasy. This is pure fantasy. And again, I'm willing to say it's possible that this is true. It is possible that someone's wild story that they thought up and made this video out of and made a million other videos out of and dreamed up and happened to have very elite connections that, might lead you to think of reasons that they might want us to think that humans just evolved from specks of dust and there's nothing more special to it than that. It's possible that happened to be true. I'm just saying that it's retarded and probably not true.
And I think it's not a coincidence that the theory of evolution basically starts to grow at the same time that Marx's theories start to grow.
Probably not a coincidence.
They feed into each other. Now, to steelman this a little bit, there are some theory. He does talk about an origin of the species, how there could have been just like a gigantic leap. Like in one generation, there was just this you went from not talking, not thinking, and like a quadruped to a talking, thinking biped. I mean,
and I do think there are instances. I mean, there's evidence that like there are species that do evolve, like change in some way.
Sure,
So
dogs.
yeah, right. Like I'm not trying to suggest that is not a thing. So I want to be pretty clear about that. I just mean it as the origin of life.
Right. Yeah. It's ridiculous to think that. Well, first of all, there are scientific laws that tell us that something cannot exist in eternity. Matter cannot exist in eternity. So whatever that Big Bang was had to exist for eternity. And then you have order out of chaos. Now, okay, but usually when there's chaos and then order follows, it's because somebody has guided it back to order.
Oh, and we didn't even mention where in this is consciousness explained?
It's not. And there's a great as much as I'm not a big fan of the Dalai Lama. Even when I was like studying Buddhism and Hinduism, I was like, this guy's weird.
Yeah, he's a creeper. They all are.
But he had it at one point. He was debating a neuroscientist, and that's what he brought up. He's like, okay, so how do you explain consciousness? And they don't have an answer for it. They don't have it.
Randomly one day a creature was born with it, and since that was better for the survival of their species, then we're all a descendant of that one that woke up with consciousness just randomly. That is the only explanation that fits in line with this theory.
Well, I've actually heard a really good theory that
that they took mushrooms.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you mentioned that on a show we did a few years ago. Actually,
yeah, that they took that they may have taken mushrooms, and that's when they started to think, and also by having that voice, by having an inner monologue, an inner dialogue, they could they think somebody else is out there, and that could be. I mean, maybe
the concept of someone else also creates the concept of self, and kind of there you go. So I can buy that. What I can't buy is magical explosion from nothing turned into me. It's absurd. It's really, really, really absurd, actually. And again, that's why it's my number one, because it's the most ridiculous and has the least evidence, but is probably I think is believed by more people than any of even the first four I mentioned.
Well, what's really upsetting is, I mean, I've talked to people who believe in it, and I'll be like, it's called the theory, right? And they'll be like, yes, it's a theory,
but it's scientific theory,
but it's true. No, they'll say, yes, it's a theory, but it's true. It's been proven true. I'm like, then you have to stop calling it a theory.
Yeah, then take that disclaimer off, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not scientific for you to call, for you to say that it's a theory and it's a fact at the same time. It could be it can be facts that are evolving that you're learning more and more about. I mean, we don't know everything about, it's like 9/11. We don't know everything about 9/11, but we know it happened. I mean, unless this is all a simulation, and
which brings me to my number 1A. So now, Pete, it's been a blast, man. We went.
I know you gotta get out of here.
Yeah, so we're not gonna get to do a smoke-filled room, a little bonus, but I think a 2-hour show is a pretty good makeup for it. Maybe someday you and I will circle back and maybe do like a behind the scenes or something. We'll see.
Okay.
But I gotta go see the great Jim Brewer tonight. So I'm glad we did this. I'm glad we decided. I'm glad it went live. I'm glad we had all the commentary and all the action in here. So I think it worked out fantastically. So Pete, thank you so much.
Are you going to ask Jim why he deleted his episode with Owen and Benjamin?
I didn't know that. Maybe if there's a question and answer session, I just might. Really, that's true. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
That is surprising and interesting. So okay, that's going to be on my mind now.
Owen thinks
cancel.
Owen thinks it's because Joe Rogan told him to.
Which would be really interesting, because one of Jim's stories on my show is about some other Hollywood guy telling him to say something a certain way. So that would be interesting if that was the case. Anyway,
Pete Quinones show, PeteSubstack.com. Love you, Marc. Always, man.
Peace, Pete. I'm going to run my closing animation and then I'll see you. Adios, everyone.